Jake was just trying to fix a broken plasma valve on mining station 47. It was a dusty place, filled with metal, heat, and noise. He wiped sweat from his brow, groaned, and reached down to grab his favorite red toolbox. That's when it happened. Something soft brushed his cheek. It wasn't dust. It wasn't wind. It was lips. He looked up quickly, standing on top of his toolbox. Was her, a short alien girl with silver blue skin, wild white hair, and glowing golden eyes. She looked down at him, calm and confident. "You're mine now," she said, with a small smirk. Jake blinked, completely frozen. "What?" He whispered. The other workers in the maintenance bay stopped moving. Everyone stared. Someone dropped a wrench. It hit the floor with a loud clang. No one laughed, no one spoke. Her name was Kyra. She was new on the station, part of a small alien trade crew. Jake had seen her a few times, quiet, fast, always watching, but they had never spoken till now. "You stood still," she said, still standing on the box. "You didn't stop me. You didn't turn away, and you didn't reject my touch." She tilted her head. "That means you accept me. We are bonded." Jake looked around, hoping someone would laugh, explain, say it was a joke. But the other workers took a step back, fear in their eyes. One of them whispered, "She's from the dray lorry. Warrior class." A kiss from them isn't just for fun. It's a vow. Jake raised his hands. "Hold on. I didn't know. I was just grabbing my tools." "I didn't mean." Kyra stepped off the box, now just chest high compared to Jake. She placed one hand gently on his chest. "Then you must learn what it means, mate." Jake backed away slightly. "Whoa, whoa. I think you misunderstood." Something. Kyra narrowed her eyes. "You did not pull away, and I chose you." Then she smiled again, a little softer this time. "That is enough." She turned around and walked away calmly, but before she left, she added over her shoulder, "Tonight, I cooked for us. We begin as one." Jake stood frozen, his hands still near his cheek. He wasn't sure if it was the kiss or the look in her eyes that made his heart beat faster, but something deep inside told him his life had just changed. Later in the dining hall, things got worse. People stared, whispered, avoided eye contact when Jake walked in. The whole place fell quiet. He sat down alone with his tray of food. Till Kyra appeared again. She dropped a hot bowl of spicy broth in front of him and sat across the table. Smiling proudly, "I made this myself," she said. "You didn't have to. I did." She interrupted, "My mate must be strong. You must eat well." Jake looked around, panic rising in his chest. Other miners avoided their table like it was cursed. One of them, Tony, walked past and whispered, "You're in deep now, buddy. She thinks you're hers, and they don't let go." Jake looked at Kyra. She stared at him like he was her whole world. She wasn't being mean or evil, just completely serious. That night, Jake sat on his bunk, staring at the wall. A knock came at the door. He opened it slowly, and there she was, holding a folded blanket and a small bag. "I will sleep outside your door," she said softly, "until the ceremony to guard you, as is tradition." Jake stared. "Ceremony?" "Yes." She nodded. "My clan will arrive in 3 cycles. Then we will join." He almost dropped his cup. "Your clan." She nodded again, serious. "And when they arrive, they will see I have chosen well." Jake tried to speak, but his mouth just opened and closed like a fish. Kyra placed the blanket down gently, gave him one final nod, and sat by the door, crossing her arms like a soldier. As Jake lay back in his bunk, wide-eyed, he whispered to himself, "This can't be happening. I just wanted my wrench." But deep inside, in a place he couldn't explain, a strange warmth grew. Someone had chosen him, not because of his power or status, but because he stood still. And somehow, that meant everything to her. Jake woke up early, hoping yesterday had just been a strange dream, but when he opened the door to his room on Mining Station 47, she was there, Kyra, the alien girl with silver blue skin and wild white hair, sat cross-legged right outside his door, eyes open, alert, and completely serious. "Good morning, mate." "Tea," she said, without smiling. Jake sighed, rubbed his eyes, and said, "You didn't have to stay here all night." "I said I would guard you," she replied, standing quickly and brushing dust from her armor. "I do not break my word." She followed him to the washroom, waited outside the showers, then followed him to breakfast, then followed him to work. And no matter how many times he tried to politely ask for space, she always said the same thing. "I am your shield now. Until the joining ceremony, your safety is my life." Jake worked in the machine bay, fixing mining bots and energy turbines. Normally, it was noisy, crowded, and full of jokes from the crew. Today, silence. Everyone gave Jake space. No one wanted to be near the alien girl with the glowing spear on her back. She didn't speak to them, only watched. Every time someone came too close to Jake, Kyra's hand moved to her spear. When Jake bent down to fix a power core, she even bent down beside him, mimicking his movements. He looked over and said, "Seriously?" "Yes," she replied. Without blinking, he groaned and stood up. "You're going to get me fired." She tilted her head. "If anyone tries to fire you, I will challenge them." "That's not what I meant." During lunch, Jake sat alone at his table again. A few workers tried to come near, but when Kyra gave them a slow stare, they quickly turned away. Jake felt like he had a force field around him and, not in a good way, he poked at his food. "You know, you're kind of scaring everyone." "I must," she replied simply. "They might try to take you." "No one's trying to take me," Jake said. "We're just a bunch of mechanics and miners. This isn't a war zone." Kyra blinked. "Everything is a war zone, Jake. You just don't know it yet." Later, Jake tried sneaking away while she was distracted. He ducked into the back tunnels of the station, climbed a ladder, squeezed past storage crates, and made it all the way to the observation deck. Finally, peace. He sat down, looking out at the stars, breathing deeply. "She's intense." "Ha," he whispered to himself. "Pretty, yeah? But wow, way too serious." Just as he started to relax, a soft voice behind him said, "I knew you'd come here. You like quiet places." Jake jumped and turned around. There she was, standing calmly, hands behind her back. He shook his head. "How did you find me?" Kyra stepped forward and sat beside him. "I watched you for weeks before I chose you. I know your favorite foods, the way you walk, even the way you scratch your neck when nervous." Jake stared, jaw dropping. "I'm not a stalker," she added gently. "It's tradition. A warrior must study their mate before making the bond." Jake leaned back and groaned. "You really believe we're supposed to be together, don't you?" Kyra looked at the stars, her voice quiet now. "On my world, we don't chase many things. Only honor, survival, and love. When we find one, we hold it tightly." He didn't know what to say. No one had ever looked at him like that. Not as a joke, not as a tool, but as someone important. Still, it was all too fast. The next day, Jake tried one more thing. He talked to his boss. "Chief Riker, she's messing with my work," Jake explained, "and the others are scared. Maybe she should be assigned somewhere else." Chief Riker leaned back in his chair, scratching his chin. "You want me to separate you from a Drailery warrior girl who's convinced you are her soul bond?" Jake nodded. Riker laughed. "Son, I've seen her kind tear apart battle drones with their hands. You're lucky she's guarding you, not dragging you back to her ship." Jake frowned. "So I'm just stuck like this?" Riker shrugged. "Unless you can convince her you're not worthy. But if you ask me, she's already made up her mind. That night, Jake returned to his room. Kyra wasn't outside the door. This time, instead, she was inside, cooking something in a small alien pot over a portable heat dish. He stared. "How did you left the door unlocked?" she said. "I took it as an invitation." Jake watched her stir a purple stew that smelled strangely good. She served him quietly and sat across the table. "Why are you doing all this?" he asked, softer now. She looked into his eyes. "Because I saw you, Jake. You helped the old miner with a broken hand. You gave your food to the sick boy in medbay. You never brag. You never lie." She placed her hand over his gently. "You stood still. You didn't push me away. That means everything to me." Jake didn't pull his hand back this time. Jake was trying to act normal. He showed up at work, ran system checks, fixed a blown-out turbine like everything was fine, but deep down, something didn't feel fine anymore. It was Kyra, not just her presence now, but what she had said the night before. "They will come for the ceremony." At first he thought she was joking, or maybe exaggerating, but now he saw it. She had packed her things, cleaned her armor, and had even started marking the floor of her room with glowing alien symbols. She was preparing. Really preparing. That morning, Jake logged into the station's long-range scanner, just to check. He zoomed in on the outer edge of the solar system and, there it was, a ship. Not just any ship, it was massive, shaped like a crescent claw, glowing blue like fire, and broadcasting in Draelari code. "This is Clan Vurok. Our daughter has made her bond. We come to honor it." Jake nearly fell out of his chair. Jake ran to the command deck and burst into Chief Riker's office. "They're coming," he shouted. Riker didn't even look surprised. "Yep, saw it an hour ago." "That's a Draelari honor ship." "It's not armed, don't worry. At least not on the outside." Jake paced the floor, panicking. "What do I do? They think we're joined. I'm not ready for whatever alien wedding stuff they do." Riker folded his arms. "You should have pulled away when she kissed you." "I didn't even know it meant something." Jake shouted. "Exactly," Riker said with a sigh. "And that's why they think humans are too soft." Back in his room, Jake found Kyra polishing her spear. "They're coming, aren't they?" he asked. She nodded, eyes focused on her weapon. "Yes. My father will test you. My mother will speak the vow. My sisters will mark the floor with ash. The bond will be witnessed." Jake swallowed hard. "And if I say no," she stopped polishing. "You can say no," she said slowly. "But if you do, I will lose everything. My name, my honor, my place in the clan." Jake felt his chest tighten. Kyra stood up and faced him. "You think this is just culture or tradition," she said, voice soft but steady, "but to me, it is more. You are not just a mate. You are safety. You are calm. I chose you not for your strength, but because your heart is kind." Jake didn't know what to say. No one had ever said something like that to him before. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking of the giant warship getting closer every hour. He looked out the window, across the stars. Then down at his hands rough from years of fixing machines. He had always felt small, replaceable. But Kyra didn't see him that way. Still, he was scared. He didn't want to be forced into anything, so he sent a message to the Earth Embassy. "Urgent, alien bond claim. Need advice, ASAP." Oh. The reply came a few hours later. "Dear citizen, Draelari bonding customs are legally recognized under Galactic Unity law. If you accepted contact and showed no resistance, the bond is valid unless formally rejected before witnesses. However, be warned, formal rejection has led to severe consequences, including exile, duels, and interspecies conflict. Choose wisely." Jake sat in silence for a long time. The next morning, alarms rang across the station. The warship had entered orbit. Jake ran to the viewing deck. Heart pounding. The ship was huge black metal, glowing scars across its hull, and banners hanging from its wings. It moved slowly, like a beast that knew no one would dare challenge. It then, shuttle launched. It came down fast, fire streaking behind it. Landing with a deep thud near the docking bay, Kyra stood near the entrance, already in full armor. She turned to Jake and said quietly, "My father has come. You must now speak your truth." Inside the docking bay, 4 tall Draylari warriors stepped out. They wore dark red armor, spikes along their arms, and carried long-bladed spears. One of them, taller than the rest, stepped forward, his eyes sharp like daggers. He looked at Kyra, then at Jake. "I am Warfather Jern," he said, voice deep like thunder. "My daughter says you are worthy. We have come to test that." Jake swallowed hard. I don't know if I'm ready, Jern." Stepped closer, towering over him. "You stood still when she kissed you. That is not weakness. That is courage. But now you must prove your heart." He handed Jake a small silver dagger. "Do not fear," he said. "You will not bleed, but your truth will." Kyra stepped beside Jake and whispered, "The trial of the heart begins tomorrow. Rest now. It will be hard." Jake sat on his bed that night, holding the dagger in his hands. He looked at Kyra, sat beside the door again, watching over him. She had no fear, only faith. He whispered to himself, "What if I fail? What if I break her heart?" And for the first time in years, Jake felt something deep and real, a strange, powerful need to protect her the way she protected him, not because of duty, but because she saw something in him he didn't see in himself, and now it was time to find out if she was right. Jake didn't sleep that night. He lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. Holding the silver dagger in one hand, the words from Warfather Jern echoed in his head. "You must prove your heart." But Jake's heart wasn't sure. Yes, Kyra protected him. Yes, she cared. But love, marriage, a life with an alien warrior and her clan, that was too big, too fast. Too much. As the station lights dimmed and the halls went quiet, Jake stood up slowly. He walked toward Kyra's room, his boots heavy on the floor. Her door was slightly open. She sat inside, sharpening her blade, her armor polished and ready. When she saw him, she didn't smile. She just nodded once. "I know why you're here," she said. Jake stepped inside, his throat dry. He placed the dagger on the table between them. "I can't do this," he said gently. "I'm just a mechanic. You're a warrior. You're part of something bigger. I'm not strong enough for your world." Kyra looked at the dagger for a long time. Then she stood up slowly and turned away, facing the window. "I understand," she said softly. "You are free to go. I will not stop you." Jake felt a weight lift from his chest, but then he looked at her face in the glass. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. She didn't cry loudly, didn't scream, just stood there, silent and still, as her heart cracked. Inside her chest, "Kyra," he whispered. She didn't turn around. "You were my one choice," she said. "The one I waited for. The one I believed would stay." Jake took a step forward, but she raised a hand. "No," she said, voice low, "you chose. That is enough." The next morning, Kyra was gone. Her room was empty. Her spear, her armor left neatly folded on her bed. The symbols on her wall were wiped clean. Jake checked everywhere. The mess hall, the engine bay, the observation deck, but she was nowhere. He asked around. Some said she took a supply pod and left. Others said she went to the warship to face her father's judgment. "She left a message for you," said one of the Drelari guards. The guard handed Jake a small crystal. "Okay." He pressed it, and Kyra's voice played softly. "Jake, I chose you because I believed in you. Even if I was wrong, I don't regret it. I will not bring shame to your name. Goodbye." Jake sat down, the message still playing in his hand. And for the first time since she kissed him, he felt truly alone. Then the sirens blared. Incoming boarding shuttle Drelari war signal. Chai ran to the command deck. The warship was powering weapons. Another shuttle was landing fast, but this time, it wasn't for peace. Warfather Jern marched into the station, his face cold. "Your rejection has brought shame," he growled. "My daughter has gone into the desolation." Jake blinked. What? "A place of exile," Jern said. "No food, no shelter, no return." Jake stood frozen. Kyra had punished herself. "To protect him from her people's wrath, you must go back," Jake said. "You must bring her back." But Jern shook his head. "She is dead to us now." Jake's hands clenched into fists. "No," he said, "not to me." Without thinking, Jake grabbed his jacket and sprinted to the launch bay. He jumped into a scout pod, fired up the thrusters, and ignored every warning from the control tower. Unauthorized launch detected. He didn't care. He had to find her. The desolation was a cold, dark moon on the edge of the system. No sunlight. No life. Just ice and stone. Jake landed the pod hard, barely controlling it through the rough wind. He stepped out, wrapped in thermal gear, calling her name, Kira. Nothing. He wandered for hours, searching through caves, rocky cliffs, and frozen lakes. Just when he was ready to give up, he saw it. A flicker of heat on his scanner. A weak life signal. He ran toward it, slipping on the ice, his lungs burning. In the cold air, then he found her curled in a cave, covered in frost, her breathing shallow. "Kyra," he shouted, pulling her into his arms. Her eyes fluttered open, surprised. "Why did you come?" She whispered. Jake hugged her tightly, tears in his eyes. "Because I was wrong," he said, voice shaking. "You gave up everything for me. I'm not leaving you here. Not now, not ever." Back on the station, medics worked fast. Kyra was weak. But alive, the Drelari elders watched in silence as Jake sat by her bed. Holding her hand, Warfather Jern stepped forward and said, "You would risk your life. For her." Jake looked up and replied, "I already did." Jern stared for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. That night, Kyra woke in her bed. Jake asleep in a chair beside her, still holding her hand. She smiled softly and whispered, "I thought I had lost you." Jake opened one eye and smirked. "You almost did." He leaned closer. This time, he kissed her. The storm had passed. But now came the test. Jake had saved Kyra from the desolation. The Drelari elders watched everything. They saw his pain, his choice, his courage. But tradition still demanded a test, the trial of the heart. "You saved her life," Warfather Jern said, standing tall before the Drelari Council. "But love is not just action, it is truth. And truth must be proven." Jake stood in the center of the ceremony chamber, inside the Drelari warship. The floor was made of dark stone, carved with glowing runes. Around him stood warriors, elders, Kyra's sisters, and her father. Kyra, still healing, sat on a throne of woven steel and bones. Her eyes fixed on him, she said nothing, but her gaze burned with hope, fear, and something deeper. Love. Jake looked down at the object handed to him, a simple stone, cold in his palm. It pulsed with a faint blue glow. "What do I do with this?" he asked. An elder stepped forward. "This is the Heartstone. You must place it over your own heart and speak 3 truths. One about yourself, one about her, and one about the bond you wish to build. Jake looked around. Everyone was silent. What happens if I lie? The stone will turn black, the elder said, and your bond will be broken forever. Jake closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He pressed the stone to his chest. It was colder than he expected, like ice touching skin. His fingers trembled. Then he opened his mouth and spoke. First truth, he said, voice steady. I am afraid. I always have been. Afraid of being nothing. Afraid of being left behind. Afraid that I'm not enough. The stone pulsed once, then glowed brighter. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Jake kept going. Second truth, he said, eyes turning toward Kyra. She is stronger than anyone I've ever met. Not because she fights, but because she feels. She cries in silence. She protects without reward. She would die for honor, but she gave it up for me. Kyra's eyes widened. Her lips trembled. The stone pulsed again brighter. Warmer Jake swallowed hard. Now the last one, the most important. Third truth. He said slowly, his voice cracking. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'm ready to be a mate, or a hero, or even a good man. But I know this, when she's near, I feel whole. When she looks at me, like I matter. I start to believe it, and I want to build something with her. Even if I'm scared, even if I fall, I want to fall with her. The entire room was still. The heartstone glowed bright white, so bright Jake had to squint. Then, it floated out of his hands and rose into the air. A soft humming filled the chamber. The Draylari bowed their heads. Warfather Jern stepped forward, his armor clinking with each heavy step. He looked at Jake with something new in his eyes, respect. You have passed, he said. You have spoken truth. Your bond is now sealed. Kyra rose from her throne, slowly, still weak but proud. She walked toward Jake, each step slow but firm, then stood in front of him. Only chest high, her voice barely a whisper. You stood still once, when I kissed. You and I thought that meant everything, she said. But today, you spoke when you could have hidden. You told the truth when you could have lied. And now, I know it's real. Jake smiled. I still think you're way too intense. Kyra raised one eyebrow. You like intense? He laughed. So did she then. In front of her people, she stood. On her toes, and kissed him again. But this time, Jake didn't stand still. He leaned in. Later, there was a feast on the ship. Alien drums echoed through the halls. Kyra's sisters sang songs of fire and storm. The clan warriors drank glowing liquid that hissed in the air. Jake sat beside Kyra, his hand in hers. You sure you want to stay with me? He asked. You're mine now, she said, with a grin. Forever, and if I want to argue? She leaned close and whispered, then I'll stand on your toolbox again. He laughed so hard he nearly spilled his drink. But in the shadows of the celebration, a silent transmission was sent. A cloaked ship watched from afar. Someone, somewhere, didn't want this bond to succeed. The love between a human and a drillery. Warrior might be the start of something bigger than either of them imagined. And not everyone wanted that. The stars were calm. The clan ship floated above mining station 47 like a sleeping beast. Inside, music still echoed from the bonding feast. But peace never lasts. The silence broke when the alarms screamed. Unauthorized ship-detected weapons locked impact imminent. Jake dropped his drink. Kyra stood at once, grabbing her spear. Her sisters leaped into formation, war chants beginning. The celebration turned into chaos in seconds. Outside, a dark, needle-shaped vessel tore through space like a knife. No markings, no signal. Only one goal attack. Warfather Jern barked orders. Defensive shields up. Battle stations ready. Jake rushed beside Kyra, panic rising in his chest. Who are they? Atias. Eyes narrowed. Raiders. They hate unions between species, especially ours. Jake clenched his fists. They're here because of me. No, she said, grabbing his arm. They're here because we matter. The enemy ship fired. Twin plasma blasts slammed into the Drelari hull, shaking the floors. Lights flickered. Kyra's sisters sprinted toward the launch bay. Jake stumbled, caught himself. What do I do? I'm not a fighter. Kyra turned. To him, her face calm but burning with resolve. You fight with me. Jake stared at her. I don't even know how to hold a blade. Kira placed a hand over his chest. Over his heart. You already passed the hardest test. Now we stand together. She tossed him a small shield device, then turned and ran. Jake followed because he couldn't let her face this alone. The launch bay was already under attack. Enemy drones burst through the outer hull. Metal claws slicing and sparking. Drelari warriors roared and met them with spear and blade. Kyra dove into battle, moving like lightning, every strike precise, every motion fluid. Jake watched anon till one drone broke through and charged at him. He raised the shield. Panicked. The drone's claws struck and the shield flared. Holding strong, Jake growled and rammed into the machine, knocking it back. He didn't know what he was doing, but he refused to back down suddenly. Kyra cried out. A heavy drone had struck her from behind. She fell hard, blood on her cheek. Jake ran. Screaming her name, the drone raised its blade. Jake threw himself. Between them, he raised the shield again. But the drone was too strong. It slammed into him, knocking him across the bay. He hit the wall, dizzy, ribs burning. The drone turned back toward Kyra, blade rising. No, Jake whispered, struggling to stand. Then something inside him snapped. He grabbed a broken metal rod from the floor and charged. Get away from her. He slammed it into the drone's back. Again and again, sparks flew. Circuits cracked. The drone collapsed. Jake dropped the rod, breathing hard, and crawled to Kyra. She blinked up at him, pain in her eyes. You came back. He smiled weakly. I'm yours, remember? The Drelari warriors pushed back the remaining attackers. The ship shook one final time, then the enemy vessel retreated, vanishing into the stars. Silence returned. Only the sound of heavy breathing, groans, and sparks filled the bay. Kyra sat up slowly, leaning on Jake. I should have protected you, she said. Ashamed, Jake shook his head, holding her close. No, this time it was my fight too. Hours later, in the med bay, Jake sat beside Kyra's healing pod. Warfather Jern entered, staring at him. You fought well, human. Jake stood, trying not to wince at the pain in his ribs. I'm no warrior, but I couldn't let her fight alone. Jern stepped closer. You have earned more than our respect. You've earned our blood. Jake raised an eyebrow. What does that mean? The Warfather placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. It means you are now Drelari too. Back on the station, the miners gathered around as the Drelari began repairs. Chief Riker clapped Jake on the back. Didn't think you had it in you, kid. Jake winced and smiled. Me neither. Later that night, Jake walked into Kyra's room. She was sitting up, bandaged but strong. He sat beside her and said, next time, we stay out of the spotlight. Kira smirked. You say that, but the galaxy isn't done with us yet. Jake laughed, leaned forward, and whispered, then I hope your clan is ready for a human who fixes ships and gets into trouble. Kira smiled, eyes glowing. With you beside me. Let them come. but somewhere far away. The dark ship limped back to its base. A shadowed figure watched the feed, seeing Jake stand beside Kyra. The figure growled, human and Drailer, bonded by fire. We must end this before others follow. And so, in the dark corners of space, another threat began to rise, but Jake and Kyra didn't care. For now, they had each other. 3 weeks later, Mining Station 47 felt different. The walls were still made of steel. The air still smelled like grease and plasma fuel. But something in the atmosphere had changed. Or maybe it was just Jake who had changed. He walked through the station with bruises healed and posture straight, not because he felt stronger, but because someone believed in him. Beside him walked Kyra. Her armor traded for a worker's jumpsuit, her spear replaced by a hydrospanner. She smiled more now, and sometimes even laughed, though it still startled people. Everyone on the station knew their story. The human who stood still when kissed, the alien warrior who saw his heart, and the battle they fought together. Some whispered about it, others gave awkward smiles, but most just gave them space and respect. That morning, Jake returned to the repair bay. The plasma vent was broken again, leaking steam all over the floor. He rolled his eyes and reached down for his toolbox, only to see it already opened, and standing on top of it was Kyra. She crossed her arms and grinned down at him. Jake raised an eyebrow, amused, seriously. Again, she said nothing, just leaned forward and kissed his cheeks softly, warmly. Jake chuckled and shook his head. You and this toolbox, ... Kyra stepped down and looked into his eyes. It's where we began, she said quietly. You stood still. You didn't run. He smiled. Well, now I know better. I should have run far, far away. Kyra smirked. You would have missed the best kiss of your life. Jake laughed. You mean the kiss that got me almost killed by drones and dragged into a clan ceremony? She leaned close, her voice playful. You mean the kiss that gave you me? Jake paused and nodded softly. Yeah, I do. Later, during lunch, they sat together at their usual table. But this time, others joined them. Tony, the grumpy mechanic who once avoided Kyra, now sat down with a cautious smile. So, you guys gonna have little warrior kids now? I joked. Kyra tilted her head, confused. You mean hatchlings? Jake nearly choked on his food. Tony laughed. I'm kidding. Mostly, Jake gave him a look. Eat your soup, Tony. But Kyra leaned closer to Jake and whispered, I wouldn't mind raising hatchlings. One day, Jake froze. She smiled like she'd just tossed a plasma grenade into his brain. That evening, Jake took her to the observation deck. The stars glittered like a sea of lights, stretching far beyond what any scanner could touch. They sat in silence for a while. Then Jake asked, Why me? Kyra blinked, surprised. You still ask that? Yeah. Jake said you could have chosen anyone stronger, faster, tougher. Kyra placed her hand on his. I watched many humans, some loud, some arrogant, some cruel. She looked up at him. You were kind, quiet. You fixed things no one else noticed. You smiled at broken people. You gave without expecting. She paused, her voice softer now. I didn't want someone who could fight beside me. I wanted someone who could stay beside me. Jake's throat tightened, and, I wanted someone who wouldn't pull away when I kissed him. Jake laughed quietly, then leaned in and kissed her again. This time, no one watched. No one whispered. Just stars above. And a bond that now felt unbreakable. Weeks turned into months. The Draylari clan returned to their homeworld but left Kyra behind with full blessing. Warfather Jern shook Jake's hand before leaving and said, Take care. of her, or we'll return with fire. Jake smiled and replied, "Yes, sir." Life settled into a new rhythm. Kyra joined the maintenance crew, quickly becoming the most feared and respected member. Jake got used to working with someone who could lift fusion coils with one arm. They worked, they fought, they kissed. They learned what it meant to be together. Day by day, one day, a new recruit asked Jake, "How did it start? Really? With her?" Jake pointed at the red metal box near the engine room. "That toolbox," he said with a smile. "She stood on it and kissed me." That was it. The recruit blinked. That's all. Jake looked toward Kyra, who was fixing a plasma leak in full gear, glowing sparks around her. She glanced back and winked. Jake smiled. That was enough. Back in their shared quarters, as night fell, Jake lay beside Kyra. She rested her head on his chest, her silver-blue skin warm against his. "You still think about leaving that day?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "Not once," he whispered. "Because that moment on the toolbox was the best accident of my life." Kyra laughed, low and quiet. "Then maybe tomorrow," she said playfully, "I'll kiss you on the fuel tank." "See what happens," Jake groaned. "Please don't." That's how explosions happen. She looked up with glowing eyes. Exactly. They both laughed, and in the quiet of the stars, the toolbox that started everything stayed right by their door. A reminder, a symbol, a beginning.